Hey, hi, welcome back to BRR Knowledge Center. In this today's session, we'll talk about microservices introduction. So, what is this microservices architecture? And when it was invented or started to get into the software development, and what are all other architectural styles we have before microservices architecture? Let me quickly share my screen and navigate through different slides here. I'm just going back. So if you look at here, this is what my agenda for this session, like a brief view and history of microservice and definition of microservice and example to map to a microservice and architectural styles, and then we have a summary. So we'll just quickly navigate to the next slide here, a brief view on history here. So when it comes to history of microservices, so during the early days of software development, so there are huge kind of barriers to get into entry for the programming languages, right? So like only people with the kind of backgrounds, computer science and kind of mathematics could use these programming languages. And other background peoples are not able to enter into the software field to write a program. That's where the huge barriers are existent or taken place in the earlier days. So in the 1964, so this is what era 1960 and 1964. So the general purpose programming language called BASIC was developed. So I think you people are aware that. So the BASIC and Foxconn DBase and the database of DBMS, all those programming languages and the database concepts were introduced in the 1960 era. So when this programming language BASIC was invented in that particular era, so it was no kind of easy syntax which is having for the developers to understand. So everyone is very comfortable with this language. Hence, it is decrease or lowers the barriers of the programmers to get into the programming of software development. Hence, this basic programming language was lowers the barriers so that non-science background or mathematic background students or developers also from the different departments write a program, and they started writing a program and then get into this software development. So as there was a rapid growth of computing applications in the 1960 era, so software became very larger and complex. Okay. So and then in the 1972, I think it was another era after almost just 10 years. So another kind of architectural style was introduced here. The basic programming language, which was invented in 1964, was a monolithic. So what is a monolithic? Monolithic is nothing but building all these business logics and UI and database layer and other layers on single file or single environment, or you can call it as single stone. If you look at Basic or Fox Pro or DBase, we used to develop everything on the single file, but doesn't have any kind of layer architecture earlier to modularity architecture, right? So you have to write all your design part in the same file, and then you have to write your business logic, and then you have to write your database logics as well, right? So as I said, there was a rapid growth of computing applications that in that 1964 era. Software become very larger and very complex. Hence, there are some tedious problems we have it in the monolithic architecture. So then in the 1972, another architecture called modularity and no kind of architecture was introduced with along with information hiding, that is abstraction of your information. So there is a huge development being implemented on the modularity architecture. And also in the 1990s or 2000 era, so there is a huge usage of mobile internet with the Wi-Fi and smartphone. So all the people in different sectors and organizations, so they started using of software very hugely. And then software started to eat the world where along with the traditional software and other technology companies, almost all type of companies started to develop or use software like in the banking or healthcare or insurance or restaurants or hotels and other educational institutions or music, driving, etc., etc. All these institutions, all the companies, all type of other institutions are being, having the software usage. So even many new companies like Facebook, Twitter, Uber, Netflix, Spotify came with innovative ideas, aggressive strategy, a move fast approach, which leads to the exponential growth of their applications. So when these things are happening, it suddenly organizations and software engineers found that monolithic architecture cannot handle all the challenges of modern and fast-paced or old web-scale software development. Because till 2000, so even we have a modularity, still it is in the same kind of monolithic architecture. As the people of the developers who are involving in software development have been decided that so this is not going to be work out to handle all this kind of stuff which we have in the 2000 era. So in the 2010 and 2012 era, so microservices architecture was introduced, which impacts software development landscape in a significant way with the cloud computing on containerization or DevOps. So there is a change in the software development model also. Like in the waterfall software development model is almost discarded and replaced by a fast and iterative incremental software development methodology called Agile. And even computer hardware also changed massively with cheaper and faster and faster main memory and rise of multi-core CPUs to GPUs. So and also you can see a kind of RAM size. Everything got increased. There was a change in the data storage of landscape as well as so and then different kind of database also introduced to manage all this stuff. Okay, so to handle all these kind of complexity of modern software applications, to take the advantage of cloud computing and containerization DevOps, what we mentioned in the microservices. So the modern programming languages and to fulfill the need of modern software development, a new software architecture style arose in the 2012 called microservice architecture. So this is what the history of microservices architecture. So even if you look at any other kind of big companies or kind of institutions, if you look at Netflix, Uber, WhatsApp, or Facebook, they all started with monolithic architecture because a monolithic architecture is comfortable for small teams to work with, which is why many startups choose this approach when building an application. That's fine. Monolithic was very compatible, comfortable with the development with a small size. But when it comes to a bigger size, a complex kind of software development, it's not going to work out because it is built up with a single file and single environment. That's where the problem is coming for the developers to manage the team and put some having some change or enhancing the change and release cycle and deployment. All these problems are happening with the monolithic architecture. So to avoid all these challenges or to avoid all these problems, this microservices architecture comes into the picture. So microservices architecture, shortened we call it as microservice, was introduced in 2010 and 2012. Okay, so this is what the brief history of microservices, and then we'll navigate to the next slide. So this is what the definition I'm going to define it. Microservice architecture is about decomposing a software system into autonomous units, which are independently deployable and which communicates via lightweight, language agnostic way, and together they fulfill the business goal. So as I said, this is kind of a small units or kind of autonomous units, which is going to be decomposing the largest software system. And then it is purely an independently deployable units and can communicate via lightweight and kind of protocols. And it is language agnostic, where you can write different languages in the different microservices, and there is no limit or kind of restrictions to use different languages. It's language agnostic way. So this is something in unique definition of microservices. And going to the next slide. So now if you look at this a kind of example, I just wanted to explain you here. This is what the dice we used to play when I was in the kid. So if you look at here, we have 6 sides, and basically, if you look at here, different colors are having it on each side. This is something rectangle shape, but we can call it as call it as a dice. I think we used to play with the kind of a game, Vaikunta Poly game, something where we used to spin this dice, and based on the color, we used to move around on the board to climb the kind of identity, or identity, or kind of symptoms they are mentioned in the board. So what I'm trying to say about it is, so if you look at this dice, so all the colors are being built on the single box or single item here, single kind of dice. So this is basically kind of monolithic, because you have built all the six shapes or 6 sides, the 60 different colors in a single stone, single item here, single object. That means it's a monolithic format. Okay, and look at this. This is something in a cube where it has different colors, but again, you guys can guess it. This is something modularized architecture. That means the components were now separated, it's closely coupled, but this is high cohesive architecture. That means tightly integrated together with the internal components here. You cannot remove the here the box from the cube here, right? So that means somehow you have separated with the modularity architecture, but still you are depending on each other, right? That means you cannot independently deploy, or you cannot independently remove it, or you cannot independently play with this cube. So that's what this is second example. I named it as modular architecture. And coming to the third one, then you people can guess it. This is Lego house. This is what recently my kids are playing this, because the generation was changing and the ideas were changing. So here, if you look at here, all the items which got placed on this Lego house was independent units or independent components here. That means each individual piece is having its different kind of structure, where you can simply take it and deploy it, or you can use it for constructing any house or car kind of object for the kids play, right? So what the kids are doing is they'll pick up their required units from this Lego house components, and they'll independently construct the house, right? That's what I'm talking about here was microservices architecture. That means these are a decomposing autonomous units of a software component, which can independently deployable and can communicate via lightweight, kind of process, right? So this architecture is become very popular nowadays to avoid all the problems of monolithic and modular architectures. Okay, so with this example, I think you people can understand what is a monolithic and what is a modular architecture, and what is a microservices architecture, why it is more uh, uh, you know uh, buzzing word, why it is very why it is people are using it and calling as a it's a kind of a lightweight service which everyone is using nowadays, apart from this modular and monolithic architecture. So modular is nothing but kind of a tire architecture, you can call it is. So nowadays, entire architecture, you can heard about it. So tire architecture is nothing but you will be splitting into different tires or layers. You can call it as UI layer, business layer, and DAL layer. Again, DAL layer is having a DAN and DAT, so where you can specify all your database operations. But again, each individual modularized architecture of this layer components were internally interdependent. So even though you're separated with loosely coupled architecture, it's internally high cohesive kind of concept is still following. So without UI, so there is no meaning of using DAL. Without BIS, there is no meaning of using a DAL UI layer. So it's all interdependent and tightly together, having a relation between all these layer architectures. That's what modular architecture. Okay, so this is what the architectural styles. So far, I think I've just listed off some of the architectural styles: monolithic, modularized, layered, and microservices. I think these are the architectures we have been discussed so far. Like monolithic is nothing but building or developing a software on a single file or single environment. So when something is required to be changed in this file, you have to touch all the areas, and you have to deploy everything into production or live server, because this was a single file. And modularized architecture, even though you have separated the concern of code and components, but still you are interdependent with your internal components. It's a coherent architecture, as it is still carrying some of the tedious things which monolithic architecture is having it. And to avoid these modularized or layered architecture problems, so we come up across other architectural style called microservices. So it has a kind of features which have been explained, and we'll see like the case study going forward in the next session, so that you can understand more on microservices. And then other architecture styles we have here: client server, where the client and server is communicating between different programming languages, and microkernel, where it is a Symbiana OS. This is what the old legacy operating system was implemented for the mobile operating systems, and I think we are not in use this. And again, event-driven architectural style, which is using an IoT technology, where it is executing and kind of a task based on the event is firing in the architecture. And again, big data, this is a kind of another architectural style where you are filtering the data, and then you are passing to kind of visualization framework which can visualize all your needs and the input data into a graphical representation in the machine learning concept. So again, in the big data, I think you have to use Hadoop or other kind of file systems, MapReduce or HDFs or BDFs, other technologies you're going to use in the big data, and then you will be filtering the data and then visualizing the data for user reports. This is what we are having it in the machine learning. This is again and entirely different concept in the artificial intelligence. Other thing was big compute. This is another architectural style which we are using in the simulation. So these are all the different kind of architectural styles we have, and I think some of them I have listed out, and other architectural styles also we have it. But so apart from these all these architectural styles, so we need to look into this microservices architecture, how it is now helpful or useful for modern development today or nowadays, the software development. Okay, so I hope you understand the brief history and kind of example which I got mapped to the real-time objects to explain more on monolithic and modularized and microservices, and some of the architectural styles which got listed out here. So thanks for listening to this video, and I hope you understand the history of microservices, and please subscribe this channel for more videos. Thank you.